In 1972, we needed some equality for the players that have played before us. There's a lot of players that have played prior to us that weren't getting the pension benefits and the health care benefits that we would get when we retired, and we felt that it was our duty as current players to go back and help those older players, because we wouldn't be in a situation and making the kind of money in 1972 that we made if it wasn't for what those players did in sacrifice.
In spring training, no spring training, we've got about 2 weeks to go. And they asked me, they said, "What would you do, Chuck?" I says, "You guys are going to play, you have to open up the gates." I says, "Clubs can't afford not to stay open." I said, "But the best way to solve it is give every player in baseball his release, and then you can sign whoever you want. Then you set your maximum salary."
It was 25-1. There was one dissenting vote out of each player and each player rep. There was 2 players representing teams. And that was kind of an amazing vote. We decided to walk out after a week, and of course the following year the owners got back at every player rep that they could, with the exception of guys like Willie Mays and Joe Torre and, you know, the pros and the guys that have been around and some of the stars of the game.
It was not good for the fan because it became, ball players became like samurai warriors. They went out and they just played for the money, and that was basically the bad side of it. There was a good side and a bad side.
The strike definitely affected the fans more than anything. All of a sudden, the fans saw that it was a big business, whereas the players knew it was all along. But now, you know, and the fans perceived the players being greedy.
1972 strike, since it was something that was so novel and it never really happened before, it wasn't as devastating as it was, say, maybe in 1981 and most recently in 95. I don't think that earlier had the impact that it did later, because as baseball started to receive even more media attention, that is from television, that exposure educated the fan a little bit more about the business side of baseball.
These guys challenged rules, long-standing rules, that were just blatantly unfair and shouldn't have existed. There's a difference between that and players in all sports now who threaten to go on strike over things that have nothing to do with principle, nothing to do with right or wrong, only have to do with either protecting or expanding what already is a sultan's share of the riches.
Fans could appreciate talent of the player. Now, later, I think talent is assessed by dollars, and you know, it's really a little unfortunate.
When you got into arbitration, it opened up a lot of doors, and opened up a lot of books, opened up a lot of everything that everybody was surprised at. I think that a lot of players finally got what they deserved. And then the pendulum kind of has swung a little bit too far past center, so you got to be very careful now that you know, you don't cost yourself a job because of the same thing.
I did not want free agency. I knew it would be bad for the fan loyalty.
You can't blame a ball player for getting all they can get because the owners give it to them, because it's a new world, TV contracts, and the big cities can dominate today, and the small cities have to struggle because they can't afford the payrolls that the big cities have.
The Dodgers got very smart. They came to us right at the beginning of, you know, say, the era of arbitration and free agency. It was, you know, newborn baby, and they decided to make us, I would say, offers at that point in time were such that we couldn't refuse. So they tied us up to long-term contracts, and basically their offers were in the ballpark, very fair and very generous, because nobody really knew where free agency was going to go. So Russell, Lopes, Garvey, and myself all got tied down by the Dodgers, and it basically took us up through, I would say, maybe 1 or 2 years past when we would have been eligible for free agency under today's terms.
Has it gone too far, and is it crazy? It is crazy, but the owners keep writing these checks. They don't have to.
Marvin Miller, knowing that arbitration and free agency was definitely going to be on the horizon, it was going to be important for the players to know each other's salaries. And that was something that we never knew before. Only the owners knew that.
Oh, well, I thought it was great. And I thought it was great because I had an option. I mean, I could go somewhere if I didn't feel like I was treated fairly. And I was treated fairly here. But I always had that option. Plus, that option also created, more salary.
If they want to be a free agent and we can't support them, the first big guy that we lost was Goose Gossage, and he went to the Yankees. And I even told Goose, I said, Goose, we're not giving you what you deserve, and I suggest that you go where you can get all the money you can get to take care of your family.
The whole free agency event, for the first time, truly established the player's value to an organization.
I benefited tremendously. My third year was 1976, and that's when free agency came into effect. And so there were three of us represented by an attorney named Jerry Kapstein, and it was Fred Lynn, myself, and Carlton Fisk. We all went into August of '76 without a contract, and no one in the Red Sox history had ever done anything like that. So he basically was saying that free agency is here, we're going to test it with these three young, fine players, unless you pay them what they're worth or what the market value for them should be.
Then with some clever trading, well, here came Lou Piniella, and here came Greg Nettles, and here came Sparky Lyle, and all of a sudden the puzzle is starting to fit together. And then under the very skilled general managership of Gabe Paul, all of a sudden here's Willie Randolph, and here's Mickey Rivers, and here's Ed Figueroa, and then they spent a little money and they get Reggie Jackson as a free agent, and here comes Bucky Dent in a trade, and suddenly we're looking at one of the great teams of the second half of the century.
You can spend a lot of money and try and build teams, but you still got to have the right characters and the right people, and sometimes it always doesn't work out. But for those 2 years, or the years that I've spent there, I mean, we had some really outstanding teams.
Well, you know, when you kind of jump around like a Chinese checker, I think that you kind of lose track of who's on who.
I've sort of gotten accustomed to wearing other uniforms. Of course, when I was playing with the Orioles, I never really thought down the road in terms of wearing another uniform. But you know, time changes, and you know, you make changes and you adapt to the changes. And you know, if an employment opportunity calls for wearing another uniform, then I wear another uniform.
But if an owner's got a lot of money, you can't fault him for wanting to go out and bring a winning team to that town. So if he spends millions of dollars and it doesn't pan out, well, that's his fault, because he doesn't have the right people to. But if he brings a winning team and he brings a World Series to that town, everybody loves him.
I respect the players' right to bargain for themselves and move around, and of course the management always used to trade them anyway, although they didn't change teams quite with the frequency that they do now. But I'm a guy who likes to have the familiarity of the players year after year.
The player had to perform in order to get a contract for the next year. You know, it's a little bit, you know, that I think there's a lot to be said for that. You know, being a player on the other side and having a guaranteed contract, that was very enjoyable. You know, because I knew that I could get hurt, or you know, my arm could hurt, and I could just keep pitching. And if it blew out, I didn't have to worry about it because I was still going to get paid for the next, you know, whatever, 3 years or whatever. But you know, you've always got that in the back of your mind when you don't have a guaranteed contract, but yet you have to keep pitching because the next year's contract is still going to be based on last year's performance.
If you don't win, I really believe the money is secondary.
No, I don't like the DH. I think the baseball game has been meant to be played with the pitcher hitting. I think if Catfish Hunter's a good hitter, then why should he be penalized going against a pitcher that can hit?